You just watched Sophia pour her blood into Henry's drink, and the scene lasted only a few seconds. No dramatic music. No shocking transformation. No immediate payoff. Just a quiet moment that the episode seemed eager to leave behind. But what if that wasn't just another creepy Sophia scene? What if that single drop of blood was actually the beginning of the biggest disaster season Forrest planned? Because when you look closely, Sophia didn't attack Henry. She didn't threaten him. She didn't even try to kill him. She did something far more dangerous. She planted something inside him. And if the clues hidden throughout the season are pointing where I think they're pointing, then Henry may have already become the man in yellow's most important weapon. The terrifying part is that Henry has absolutely no idea it's happening. The first thing we need to understand is that Sophia chose Henry for a reason. Nothing Sophia does is random anymore. Ever since she entered the township, every conversation, every accusation, every little manipulation has served a larger purpose. She isn't running around causing chaos because she enjoys it. She's creating pressure points. She's finding the people whose emotional wounds are already open and then pushing them even deeper. Sarah was one of those people. The Matthews family became another. And now Henry has moved to the very top of that list. Think about Henry's situation. He arrived in town hoping to reconnect with his son. Instead, he discovered that the woman he loved suffered one of the most horrifying deaths imaginable. For years, Henry believed Miranda simply disappeared. He lived with questions that could never be answered. Then suddenly those answers arrived, and they were worse than anything he could have imagined. Victor's drawings, Miranda's paintings, the evidence connected to the man in yellow, every new piece of information has been crushing him emotionally. That matters because Sophia doesn't target strong people when they're at their best. She targets broken people when they're at their weakest. When Henry sits down at that bar, he's already vulnerable. He's grieving. He's confused. He's drinking heavily. He's desperately trying to process truths that have shattered his understanding of reality. In many ways, Henry is exactly where Sarah was before the voices began controlling her. He's emotionally exhausted and searching for something that makes sense. And then Sophia arrives. What's fascinating about this scene is how carefully she controls every part of the interaction. Notice that Sophia never rushes. She never appears nervous. She never acts like someone carrying out a dangerous operation. Instead, she behaves like someone who already knows the outcome. The entire conversation feels less like a discussion and more like a setup. Then comes the blood. The obvious assumption is that Sophia poisoned Henry. That's what most viewers immediately thought. Blood goes into a drink, someone drinks it, and now something bad is going to happen. Simple. But From rarely works that way. The show loves psychological horror far more than physical horror. The monsters don't simply kill people. They manipulate them. They tempt them. They exploit fears and weaknesses. Time and time again, the greatest threats in this town haven't come from claws or teeth. They've come from ideas. That's why the most important moment in the entire scene isn't actually when Henry drinks the blood. It's what Sophia says afterward. She introduces a thought. A simple thought. What if this is all just a dream? At first, that line sounds harmless, maybe even meaningless. But when you really think about it, it's one of the most dangerous ideas anyone can introduce into Henry's mind. Because what happens when someone starts believing that nothing around them is real? They stop caring about consequences. They stop trusting people. They stop fighting. They stop believing their choices matter. And once that happens, they become incredibly easy to control. The man in yellow has always relied on manipulation. He doesn't need people to obey him directly. He only needs them to doubt themselves. Once doubt enters the equation, everything else begins falling apart naturally. That's exactly what happened with Sarah. The voices didn't force Sarah to obey. They convinced her that obedience was the correct choice. They twisted her understanding of reality until terrible actions started feeling reasonable. Now imagine the same strategy being used on Henry. Only this time there may be something else involved. Because Sophia didn't just speak to Henry. She put her blood inside him. And that changes everything. What if the blood isn't meant to hurt Henry immediately? What if it's designed to strengthen the connection between Sophia and her target? What if the blood acts like a doorway? A bridge. A direct link that allows the man in yellow to influence someone more deeply than ever before. Suddenly, that quiet bar scene becomes much darker. Because Henry may have unknowingly invited the enemy inside. And if that's true, then the effects might already be starting. The frightening thing is that we wouldn't necessarily see those effects right away. The show has always preferred slow corruption over instant transformation. Small changes. Strange decisions. Tiny shifts in behavior that seem insignificant at first until the bigger picture finally becomes impossible to ignore. And when we look at everything Sophia has done this season, one pattern becomes crystal clear. She isn't trying to destroy the township from the outside.
She's trying to destroy it from the inside.
And Henry may be the perfect tool to help her do it. But what if we're all looking at Henry's story from the wrong angle? Most theories assume Henry is the victim here, the target, the person Sophia wants to control. And while that may be true, I think there's another possibility hiding underneath everything we've seen so far. What if Henry isn't important because of who he is? What if he's important because of what he knows? The more you examine the events of Season 4, the more obvious it becomes that Henry is standing at the center of information the man in yellow desperately wants buried. Think about all the pieces Henry currently possesses. He knows about Miranda's paintings. He knows Victor's memories are returning. He knows the yellow suit was real. He knows the man in yellow existed long before anyone currently living in the township arrived. Most importantly, Henry is one of the few people actively connecting those pieces together. That's dangerous. Very dangerous. Throughout the history of From, knowledge has always been treated as a threat. Every time someone gets close to understanding the town, something interrupts them. Sometimes they die. Sometimes they disappear. Sometimes they lose their sanity. But the pattern remains the same. The town protects its secrets. And nobody represents those secrets more than the man in yellow. That brings us to a question almost nobody is asking. Why didn't Sophia simply kill Henry? She's had opportunities. Several opportunities. She could have arranged an accident. She could have manipulated someone else into attacking him. She could have used the creatures. Yet she didn't. Instead, she sat beside him for hours. She listened. She gained his trust. And then she gave him the blood. That tells us something important. Henry is more valuable alive than dead. The moment you realize that, the entire scene changes. Because if Henry's survival is necessary, then whatever Sophia put inside him likely serves a purpose beyond simple murder. The man in yellow doesn't need another corpse. He needs influence. He needs access. He needs someone who can unknowingly spread damage throughout the community. And Henry is perfectly positioned to do exactly that. Remember, Henry has relationships that Sophia cannot easily replace. Victor trusts him. Boyd trusts him. Tabitha trusts him. The residents see him as a grieving father trying to reconnect with his family. Nobody views Henry as a threat. Nobody would suspect him. That makes him incredibly useful. Imagine Henry begins changing slowly. Not enough for anyone to notice immediately. Just small things. Maybe he starts questioning people more aggressively. Maybe he begins spreading doubt. Maybe he starts encouraging dangerous decisions without realizing it. Maybe the idea Sophia planted starts growing stronger every day. What if none of this is real? What if the town is a dream? What if the only way to escape is to stop playing by the rules? The scary thing about ideas is that they spread. One person's doubt becomes another person's fear. Fear becomes paranoia. Paranoia becomes conflict. And conflict is exactly what Sophia wants. Let's go back to something the man in yellow said shortly after arriving in the township. This is when they tear themselves apart. That line wasn't random. It wasn't just villain dialogue.
It was a roadmap.
A preview of the plan. And if we're being honest, we've already started seeing it happen. Boyd and Jade are clashing more often. Sarah is becoming unstable again. The Matthews family has been blamed for multiple problems. Trust between residents is weakening. People are becoming divided. The township isn't collapsing because monsters are attacking every night. It's collapsing because people are starting to turn against each other. That's the true horror of the man in yellow. He understands something terrifying about human nature. People don't need much encouragement to destroy themselves. All he has to do is create enough pressure, enough fear, enough uncertainty. The rest happens naturally. And now Henry may be carrying the perfect tool to accelerate that process. But there's another clue hidden inside this entire situation that deserves more attention. Sophia drank with Henry. Or, at least she pretended to. Notice how different their behavior was. Henry became increasingly intoxicated. Sophia didn't. She remained calm, focused, controlled, even after sitting through multiple rounds of drinking. That suggests the entire encounter was carefully planned from the beginning. Sophia knew exactly what she was doing. Every smile, every question, every drink, every word. Nothing was accidental. She wasn't spending time with Henry. She was studying him, learning where his emotional weaknesses were, finding the exact moment when his defenses disappeared. Then she acted. The blood wasn't the beginning of the operation. It was the final step, which means Sophia probably already knows something Henry doesn't. She may already know what the blood is going to do. And that's what worries me most, because the show deliberately refuses to explain it. From Love's hiding major revelations behind seemingly simple moments. When the writers refuse to give us answers immediately, it's usually because those answers are connected to something much larger. The blood feels exactly like that kind of mystery. Not a random shock. Not a meaningless horror scene. A setup. The first move in a much bigger story. And if that's true, then Henry's real nightmare may not begin when he realizes something is wrong. It may begin long before that. Because the most effective form of corruption isn't the kind you can see. It's the kind you don't notice until it's already taken control. And right now, somewhere inside Henry, something may already be changing. The question is whether he'll realize it before it's too late. Or whether Sophia has already won. Here's the theory that keeps getting darker the more I think about it. What if Sophia never intended to control Henry at all? What if Henry was simply the delivery system? Think about how the man in yellow operates. He rarely focuses on one person for long. His real objective has always been larger than a single victim. He targets individuals because they help him reach entire groups. Sarah wasn't important because she was Sarah. She was important because she had access to everyone around her. The pastor wasn't important because of who he was. He was important because he helped Sophia enter the township. Every person the man in yellow touches becomes part of a bigger strategy. So, where does Henry fit into that pattern? The answer might be Victor. Everything keeps leading back to Victor. For decades, Victor has been carrying pieces of the truth that nobody else possesses. He's lived through multiple cycles. He's seen things nobody can fully explain. Even when he doesn't understand what he knows, that knowledge still exists inside him. And recently, those memories have started returning. That's a problem for the man in yellow. A massive problem. Because every recovered memory brings the residents closer to understanding what's really happening. The paintings, the bottle trees, the children, the cycles, the creatures. Somewhere in Victor's memories may be the key to breaking everything. And if the man in yellow knows that, then targeting Victor becomes essential. The problem is Victor isn't alone anymore. For most of his life, Victor survived through emotional isolation. He pushed people away. He hid inside routines. He buried painful memories because remembering hurt too much. But Henry changed that. For the first time in decades, Victor has something he lost as a child. Family, connection, support. Someone who reminds him of the world before the nightmare began. Someone worth fighting for. And that may be exactly why Henry was chosen. Because if the man in yellow can corrupt Henry, he can destroy Victor without ever touching him. Imagine Victor slowly realizing that something is wrong with his father. Imagine Henry becoming distant, unpredictable, dangerous. Imagine Victor watching the one person he finally allowed himself to trust start slipping away. The emotional damage alone would be devastating. But the consequences could be even worse. Because grief changes people and from. Trauma changes people. Loss changes people. We've seen it happen again and again. Every major tragedy leaves lasting scars that affect future decisions. A broken Victor could become reckless. He could stop sharing information. he could retreat into isolation again. Or perhaps most frightening of all, he could completely lose control. Victor knows things. Important things. Things connected to the history of the township. Things connected to the children. Things connected to the cycle itself. If emotional devastation causes Victor to shut down, then all of that knowledge becomes inaccessible right when the residents need it most. Suddenly, Sophia's plan makes perfect sense. She doesn't need to defeat Victor directly. She only needs to remove the person keeping Victor emotionally stable. And Henry is that person. But let's take this theory one step further. What if the blood doesn't just influence Henry? What if it creates a connection between Henry and Sophia? A living connection. A two-way bridge. The show has repeatedly explored strange forms of communication. Voices speaking across impossible distances. Visions. Dreams. Shared experiences. Messages appearing where they shouldn't exist. The rules of reality inside the township have never been normal. So, why should the blood be normal? Imagine Sophia gaining access to Henry's thoughts, his fears, his memories, his conversations. Every secret Henry learns could potentially become Sophia's secret too. Every clue discovered by the residents could flow directly back to the man in yellow. That would explain why killing Henry isn't useful. A dead Henry learns nothing. A living Henry becomes a source of information. And if that theory is correct, then the township may already have a spy living among them without anyone realizing it. The truly terrifying part is that Henry wouldn't even know he's helping. He would still believe he's fighting for the people he loves. He would still believe he's searching for answers. Meanwhile, every step forward would secretly benefit the enemy. That's the kind of psychological horror from Loves. Not monsters jumping out of the darkness. Trust being weaponized. Good intentions becoming dangerous. People unknowingly helping create their own downfall. And when you look at the final episodes remaining this season, the timing couldn't be worse. There are only a handful of episodes left. The mysteries surrounding the children are growing. The cycle appears closer to breaking than ever before. Multiple storylines are converging. Answers feel closer than they've ever been. Which means the man in yellow should be more desperate than ever. Because if the residents finally uncover the truth, his control could begin slipping away. That's why Henry's situation feels so important. Not because of what happened in the bar, but because of what might happen next. The blood wasn't the payoff. The blood was the setup. The first domino. The beginning of a chain reaction nobody can see yet. And that's exactly what makes it terrifying. Right now, Henry probably believes he's simply recovering from a night of drinking. He has no reason to suspect anything. No reason to question himself. No reason to think his life is about to change. But viewers know something he doesn't. Sophia put something inside his drink. She did it deliberately. She did it calmly. And she did it with complete confidence. People don't act that confidently unless they already know the outcome. The biggest question isn't whether the blood will affect Henry. The biggest question is how long it will take before everyone else notices. Because if Sophia's plan succeeds, Henry may become the most dangerous person in the township without ever meaning to. And by the time Victor discovers the truth, it might already be too late. So now I want to hear your theory. Was the blood meant to control Henry? Transform him? Spy on the residents? Or is there an even darker possibility hiding in plain sight that we've completely missed? One thing is certain. Sophia didn't poison Henry's drink for no reason. And whatever happens next could change the future of the township forever.